What if I told you Spring Framework 7 is completely changing how we register beans programmatically? No more verbose configuration, no more complex workarounds, just clean, flexible bean registration. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how the brand new BeanRegistrar interface that's going to help you configure your Spring application. Hello everyone, Dan Vega here. Spring Framework 7 and Spring Boot 4 are coming out this November, and I'm going to be covering a lot of those features on this channel, so look out for that playlist. But in today's tutorial, I'm going to cover programmatic bean registration using the new BeanRegistrar. Before we dive in, let me ask you something. Have you ever needed to register beans dynamically based on an environment property? Or maybe you wanted to create multiple beans in a loop, or conditionally register beans based on complex logic that conditional annotations just can't handle elegantly. Until now, we've had to jump through hoops with post processors or complex bean methods, and it worked, but it wasn't pretty. Well, Spring Framework 7 introduces a BeanRegistrar, a first-class solution for programmatic bean registration that's both powerful and intuitive. All right, so we're going to get started over at start.spring.io. I'm going to create a new Java project using Maven, and we are going to use the latest milestone, which is 4.0.0 milestone 3. You can use a snapshot. Also, if you're watching this past November 2025, then you can go ahead and use the regular version of Spring Boot 4. But that's what I'll use here today. Let's go ahead and call this Pro Beans, and we'll bring in the web support. I may set up a web project. We'll see, but that should give me enough. I'm going to go ahead and generate this project. I'm going to download that zip file, and I'm going to open it up in IntelliJ IDEA. With that, let's write some code. All right, so I have my application here. I just want to make sure it runs successfully before we do anything, and it does. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set up a config file. Let's just call this our web config, and we mark this as a configuration class. So I will define some beans in here, and then we can go ahead and talk about how we could maybe improve this application a little by programmatically registering some of these beans. Now, again, the important thing to remember here is that we are not talking about replacing the app bean annotation, right? App bean is still going to be here. In fact, probably for 80, 90, 95% of your use cases, maybe this is still the default, right? This is just another way to register these beans. So let's start with an application that has a, let's call it a message service. So the message service is going to be an interface. And in this interface, we're going to define two abstract methods here, one called getMessage and one called getServiceType. All right, and that's all our interface is going to do. And we're going to make two implementations of this. They're going to be pretty simple here. So let's go ahead and say new Java class, email message service, implements message service. Where did that come from, Dan? And then we'll go ahead and implement those methods. And all we're doing here is return. We need an emoji, of course, so let's get the email emoji. Let's see, how about that one? Email message sent at, and we'll do local date time now. That works. So we have our get message, and then the message type or the service type we'll just call email. So that is our email message type. We'll also have maybe an SMS message type. So let's go in here, new Java class, SMS message service. So there, implement message service. Let's go ahead and implement those methods. And then for SMS, let's see, emoji, phone. Do we have a good phone? I don't like any of these icons, but what the heck, who cares? All right, SMS message sent at, and then we'll do the same thing. Local date time now, and then we'll just set the service type to SMS. All right, so again, what we can do in, it's what we've done forever. And what we can still do now is we can come in here and say, we're going to define a bean. I'm going to call it email. Well, this is going to be of email message service type. And I can just return a new instance of email message service, right? And if email message service depended on something else, I can go ahead and set that up as well. So we could still do that. But what I'm going to do is maybe I have a use case where I only want to create these beans if somebody has configured the application to use those message types. Maybe, again, we're just out here having fun. Maybe this particular application only enables like one of these message types, right? So what we want to do is we want to be able to say like, okay, you can go ahead and define what that is going to look like. So let's say that we close all of this and we have some properties here. And we have something and we say app.messageType equals, and we'll say it's email. All right. So we've set up some configuration. So what I want to do now is create a new registration class that will allow us to programmatically do this stuff. So I'm going to come in here and say import Java class. We'll say, or create new Java class, sorry, MessageServiceRegistrar. Yeah, that looks good. And we're going to implement the new BeanRegistrar. So this comes from Org Spring Framework Beans Factory. And we're going to say implement the register method. So now what we could see here is we get access to the Bean registry. We also get access to the environment. And so that is what's going to make this interesting. I can say environment, get the property for app.messageType, right? This is a default value, so we could set a default value if it isn't there, and then just go ahead and set this as, let's call this something else, right? Let's say this is message type, right? So let me close this. All right, so now that we have access to the environment, we've got this property. We know what the message type is, right? So now we can come in here and do this. We could say switch on our message type, let's say to lowercase, just so we are consistent here. And we can give it a case and we can say email, right? And now we can get access to the registry and we can say register this bean for me. So register bean, and we're going to call it of type message service. And the class that we're going to use, the type, is the email message service. And then we can also get access to the spec. So if we want to, we can come in here and say spec equals spec. And then we can say spec.description. So let's see if we can drop that down. And then give it a description, email message service registered by the, let's say, via the BeanRegistrar, right? So now we could do something similar. Oops, do I have a colon there? Yeah, that's not going to work. So now I can do something similar for SMS. So let's do a little copy pasta here. Say SMS, this is the SMS service. The type is going to be SMS service, right? And then I can say the SMS message service was registered via the BeanRegistrar. Then finally, I can have a default. So the default is going to throw a new illegal argument exception, unknown message type. Here's the message type. So very simple example, but you see the power in this. Getting access to the registry, getting access to the environment. In this case, I'm switching on whatever they've configured. Imagine you had 10 or 20 of these and everybody's only using one of them and you're loading 10, 20 beans for every application, right? So this can save some performance. This could be a performance gain, but it's also just nice to have. It makes this sort of scenario much easier. So now that we have this, we definitely want to go ahead and use this in our configuration. If we just start it up now, nothing will work. But back in our web config where we have our normal beans that we're defining, we can go ahead and tell it about this new thing that we've created, right? So we can have this in there. And the way that we do that is by using the @import, and we're just going to bring in that MessageServiceRegistrar .class, and now we're bringing in those beans along with anything else that we define here using @bean. So let's test this out. Let's go ahead and create a simple message controller. I'll go ahead and pass some silly stuff in here just so we can get this up and running. And we'll say this is a message controller. And let's do something like this. So I have a request mapping at /API/messages. I have a private final message service. So this message service, I have a message controller constructor here, and I'm taking in a message service. And right now we got a squiggly. That's all right. Could not auto wire, no beans of message type. Now this is an issue with IntelliJ. So this like really screwed me up at first. I was like, wait, why is this not working? This is just IntelliJ not understanding about Spring Framework 7 and the new BeanRegistrar. Don't worry about this. We can run the application. So we're just going to have a /API/messages. And what we're going to do is just get a new message response that is going to contain the message and the service type. So whatever we've defined in our properties, right? So let's go ahead and see if we can run this. So let's go ahead and hit 8080/API/messages. And we see the email message service was sent at this date and the message type was this. If we go ahead and change our properties out, so SMS, and then we go ahead and run this again and go back over here and go ahead and hit localhost 8080/API/messages. Now we're using SMS. Again, not something for you're going to use all of the time. But if you have this problem, you've known there are ways to kind of work around this, but it isn't the prettiest solution, right? And this is a much better and elegant solution. Now we have access to the registry, the environment. We can do a whole bunch of loading of beans into the registry here based on the environment. Maybe you had a for loop and you just want to load 100 beans for whatever reason, right? There are some things you can do too. Programmatic control over registering beans with access to the environment. And there you have it. That's the new BeanRegistrar in Spring Framework 7. It gives us a cleaner way to register beans programmatically without all the verbose configuration we used to have to write. This is just one of the new features coming in Spring Framework 7 and Spring Boot 4. So make sure you're subscribed for more tutorials in this series. If you're trying out the milestone releases, let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy coding, friends.